Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge and welcome to kind of an oddly specific recommendation. Now, I know it might not seem like it, but I wanted this to be a level more than just an arranged marriage. Now, granted, most all of these books that are in the forced marriage category are also arranged marriages. Some of them aren't. We'll talk about those. But I was inspired by a couple books I've read recently to do a different tier, like above, below, whichever we were saying, of an arranged marriage, where one or both members of the marriage are being forced into it. Some of them kicking and screaming, literally. Some of them, the marriage might not even be legal because they maybe didn't even say I do. And some of them don't even know what they're getting into until they walk up to the aisle type of thing. So that's why I have this delineated as forced marriage, because, again, it's like a tier above an arranged marriage, which may be being entered reluctantly, but probably with a little more grace and dignity than with some of these. So I was able to find 10 of these. Some of these I read them quite a while ago, so I won't have as good of a memory for them as with others, but you'll get the idea, and I thought it would be fun. And no surprise, a lot of these are mafia, because that's where a lot of the forced stuff comes from. But I want to start with the one that kind of sparked this. And I was actually sent this book as a gift by the author, which was a complete surprise. I had no idea it was coming. And I actually had made this list already. And then I went to my P.O. box, and L.L. Meyer had sent me a copy of Under a Northern Sky. And it was perfect. This is going to be shiny, though, so I'll show it to you, and then I'm going to put it down. She sent me a lovely little signed copy that said, "Thanks so much for reading." I loved this book so much. So this is a barbarian romance, okay? So it has some interesting aspects to it because it's not like fully a historical thing. Like the place that it's happening in isn't like a real place, but it has the vibes of like an old school historical romance where a lot of arranged marriages and forced marriages would happen. Think like Julie Garwood type of things. But our heroine, Rena, she's been through a lot, and she's being bartered away to a barbarian realm without her consent. And her cousin is just kind of like, we're getting rid of her. We need this alliance to happen, so we're going to send her there. And Luca is the new leader in this particular section, and he doesn't want to be marrying this woman either, but his higher ups, because there is still kind of like a fiefdom or a tierdom going on with these barbarians, has told him he needs to. But the thing is, when his reluctant bride is on the way to him, something occurs where she's accused of a crime, and so when she gets there, she was never going to have a warm welcome to begin with, but she gets thrown in prison when she gets there. And they're still supposed to marry each other because they're both being demanded of. But he's now extremely suspicious of her, and he needs to kind of untangle what has happened to see if he should still marry this woman or if he should kill her and just stop himself from having to marry her at all. So they kind of get caught in this political tug of war. But the thing that made this story really endearing to me is that anytime Luca is around Rena has been through some shit, like we said. And now she's being kept prisoner, barely with any clothes, barely being kept warm. She's being mistreated. And this is where it really does remind me of like an old school romance. And it does have dark romance elements to it as well. But every time Luca goes to speak with her, they have these amazing like verbal spars back and forth, and she doesn't let him get away with anything. And even though he's like, literally, I could snap you like a twig, she's like, fucking do it. I don't want to be here. I don't want to marry you. None of this do I want. So either marry me or kill me, and just fuck off with that, right? And I just love her spirit so much. She goes through so much. This is a dark romance in a lot of aspects, But Luca is so drawn in by her. He's actually like scared by it. He thinks she may be putting a spell on him of some kind. He just doesn't know. But these two, through it all, through this scenario that neither of them wanted, they find an ally that they didn't expect. And there's a lot of other things that need to be unraveled in the world as well. So I love the kind of story, and we'll see this as kind of a theme in a couple of these other ones I'm going to share, where these two who are both reluctant to be married find a partner and an ally in the person. Because who's the only other person who understands what you're going through? The person who's also being forced to marry you. And I just really love that aspect, and I like this a lot. And this actually is a standalone as well. It is book 1 in a series, but it's going to be different couples in each one. So this is completely encapsulated. You don't need to wait for anything else. It's in KU. Go read it. It's amazing. Support this author. And this is the book that kind of sparked me to make this video. So give it its due respect. Again, if you love old school historical romance, but you want it to be a little sexier and you want the heroine to have a bit more of a backbone, Rena definitely does. And Luca, there are some great steamy scenes in this book too. That was a 3.5 on the spice scale book for me. Excellent. All right, then we got to talk about a classic that really had to be on this list, even though a lot of books in this series fit this category. This is the one that I find the heroine, at least, is kicking and screaming the most. And that's going to be Born of Hatred by Cora Riley. So Cora Riley doesn't show up on my list too much anymore. It's mostly just because I forget about her books sometimes, because to me they're kind of like the vanilla version of a lot of things I've read these days. But there's something special about these two, okay? Matteo and Gianna, they are the chaos within this mafia family, okay? Like, they are chaos. And Gianna is kicking and screaming so much that she runs away from her groom. She does not want to marry Matteo. And she runs away. And Matteo goes on a mission to find her and bring her back by her hair, basically. But also to stop her father from finding her first, because he would be even more cruel to her. Because here's the thing, Matteo, he wants to make her his bride. He wants to bang her, and he knows the best way to do that is to marry her, because she's a good Italian girl. I mean, she's not that good. She's a crazy girl. And these two just butt heads constantly, okay? She does not want this wedding to happen. But this is another case of, like, her and Matteo, they are both second-borns. Yeah, they are both second-borns. And so they both have the baggage of still needing to do what the family wants, but not being the eldest and not having the same amount of pressure on them. So, yeah, it's very interesting. But I still love these two so much, even though Gianna is a very, very frustrating heroine. This definitely fits into a forced marriage thing. And if you've gone on the Cora Riley ups and downs, like, emotional roller coaster, you know what I'm talking about, okay? You know what I'm talking about, where I just could not put down this series. Both times I binged it. There's the original time, and then a year later when I reread, I could not stop myself from reading them all. Like, I read them all. I had to do it. It was amazing. So, there we go. Then we have another recent read, and this one is called Hate Me by Summer O'Toole. This is book 2 in a series. You could read this one on its own. You'd be fine with it. This involves... this one's so complicated to get into, but basically the heroine and the hero, they've known each other since they were teens, but they're from rival families, or like their families weren't rivals when they knew each other, but now they are. But now they're trying to have an alliance, but really her father wants to use her in a marriage to undermine and like spy on the hero. And so Effie and Finn find themselves forced into marriage, shipped off to a cabin so they can get to know each other and also be kept safe. And they just have kind of this battle of wills where, like, he's wanted her for a very long time, so he's very happy to have her. He doesn't want her to know how much he wants her because he feels like that would give her power over him. And also, she doesn't want to just bend to him, but also he may be the most perfect person for her. So they just have this very interesting back and forth between the two of them. and I really enjoyed it. It was also very spicy, and there was toys used. There is public sex that happens. There is impact play, and yeah, the toy, like, it was great. I loved it so much. Then we have another historical to throw in there, and this is one that it definitely doesn't have the same level of anger, but it definitely starts as a forced marriage. It absolutely is. It just happens to be one of the sweetest ones I've read, and that's Never Seduce a Scot by Maya Banks. This is a 6-star book. This is one of my favorite historicals of all time. It's so beautiful. But our heroine, Eveline, is deaf, and she went deaf as a teenager from an accident and an illness, and now her family thinks she's touched, and she hasn't really done much to change their mind about that. She really played it up because her getting sick actually saved her from a marriage to a very evil man who had shown his cards and shown that he would be a twisted motherfucker. Like, we knew he'd be bad. But then we have Graham Montgomery, and the Montgomerys and the Armstrongs have been at war for quite a few years now, and the king is like, no, 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 I can't have two of my most powerful, like, allies fighting each other. You need to have a marriage. And guess what? The Armstrongs have a daughter, and the Montgomerys have a chief, and you two are a laird, and you two are going to marry each other, even though Graham has heard that she's touched. That's what he's heard. And so he feels like the king is basically cutting off his chance at children, because he would never force himself on someone who has the mind of a child. And so he basically is seeing that he will become a caretaker for this woman. But when he meets Eveline, it becomes clear to him that not only is she not touched, but she's been hiding a secret. And Eveline knows that this marriage will help her family. And she feels bad that she's lied to her family, but also she doesn't know how to explain to them that that man was dangerous to her. They just believe she was having maidenly fears about becoming a wife, not realizing how horrible it was. But now she's with Graham, and Graham is paying attention, and Graham discovers her secret, and he realizes what a treasure he's been given, that she's been able to protect herself all this time, and is now his wife, and not only can understand him, and they are learning how to communicate because she can read lips and she can speak, but she's beautiful and smart and just an absolute joy. Now, his people don't see her as that, and that's where most of the conflicts for this come. But this book does start as a forced marriage between the both of them. It just turns into something so beautiful. It's magnificent. I love this story. So just it's happiness all around. I love it. All right. Then we have one of the fun ones as well. Of course, we have to show Brutal Prince by Sophie Lark, which is a forced marriage on both of their parts. Absolutely is. They both enter it kicking and screaming and trying to kill each other. And that, of course, is between Ada Gallo and Callum Griffin. Now, their families aren't really like warring, but they're kind of on the brink of it. The kids of these families, who aren't really kids anymore, they have been kind of like picking at each other, and they've been kind of rivals. And it all comes to a head when there is a party happening at the Griffin's house, and the Gallo kids sneak in, and Ada accidentally starts a fire in the room where Callum is, I think it's in the library. I don't know if he's like falling asleep or what. I can't remember. It's been a little bit. But she accidentally starts a fire. And these two, like, the two families are going to go to war. And their fathers step in and are like, hold up, wait a minute. We're not starting a war, which will cost us soldiers and money and men when you guys can't just get along. So what are we going to do? You're going to marry him. Ada, you're going to marry Callum. And Callum's like, no, I'm not marrying this crazy bitch. She just tried to burn me alive. And they're like, you're going to do it. Okay? And oh, he happens to be deathly allergic to strawberries, and she happens to eat some on their wedding day. And when they kiss for the first time, he almost dies at the altar. Okay? And then he tries to drown her in their pool. They start off so great, okay? Isn't it? It's just a romance, a perfect romance being created. But here's the thing. They also have that thing where very soon into their marriage, they realize we're going to be married for a very long time. Why are we being antagonistic to each other? Why can't we be partners? Why can't we be friends? I would rather you be my ally than my enemy and me have to sleep with one eye open. If we are partners, if we're together, we can take on the world together. And that's what they fucking do. That's what they fucking do, okay? There's a reason this is Sophie's, like, most read best book. Like, it's fantastic, okay? Whichever version you get, whether you get this one, whether you have the pretty Ada version like this, whether you have the new illustrated version, it's gold, okay? It's gold, and you're missing out if you haven't started the Brutal Birthright series, okay? There we go. All right. Next, we have one that's more of like the forced engagement because there's a blackmail situation. When the marriage actually happens, it's not forced, but we're going to go with it anyway. It works with the theme because I liked the blackmail aspect to this. So that is King of Wrath by Anna Huang. Now, I feel like this series isn't getting talked about as much as like her other series yet. Part of that is only the first book is out so far. King of Pride will be coming soon, and I'm very excited for that one. But King of Wrath is, we have Dante, and he gets blackmailed into being engaged to, oh my gosh, it just left my, is it Vivian? Is that from another book? I'm sorry, I'll put her name up here. I'm so sorry that my mind just went blank about it. But he gets blackmailed by her father because he has some dirty secrets on the family, and he wants to be married into this family. And so he has his daughter, who is a very obedient, good daughter, and so she agrees to this forced engagement as well. Dante is able to secure that they will be engaged for a year, but the father stipulates that you're going to live together while this engagement is happening. And so they are in a forced proximity, living together for this year that they are engaged to each other. Now, Dante plans to use this year to figure out how to get out of the marriage, and the heroine is planning to use it to, like, she's supposed to get to know her future husband and do what her family wants her to do. So I very much enjoyed this story. I don't know. I mean, I really enjoy what Anna Huang has done. Not everyone knocks it out of the park for me, but this one was a 5-star read for me. I very much enjoyed it. I loved the slow burn. I also loved that Dante is obviously holding a lot of animosity towards her, but he knows, well, he doesn't fully know that she has nothing to do with this, but it's the father who's really, like, put him in this tight position, right? So, yeah. So that's one. It's more of the forced engagement, and then, like, the forced proximity that comes with that, which was really cool. I liked it a lot. All right. Then we have Taken by a Sinner by Michelle Hurd. This is another one that's shiny, so I'll try to hold it like this. But this is the first book in her Sinner series, and I will say that this isn't my favorite one in the series, but it does have a forced marriage that I thought was brilliant. I, like, legit thought it was brilliant because it does something that I've read in a historical romance before, and that is that the bride doesn't know who her groom is until she's at the altar because she thinks she's being forced to marry someone else. And our hero is her stepbrother, her much older than her stepbrother. His father remarried, and Tessa is only 21. He's 36. And she's now part of a mob family where she wasn't her entire life. And he's like, now I need to make sure that my new stepsister has a good husband and all this stuff. And she wants nothing to do with that. She's like, I was not raised in this. You're not going to force me to marry anyone. And her mom's like, honey, I think you need to let him pick for you, which was infuriating while I was reading it. That's part of the reason why it was so obnoxious. But Nicholas is, like, very taken with her, even though he doesn't want to admit it. And so when it's time to pull the trigger and have her marry someone else, he can't help himself. and he steps in and marries her instead. And I have to say, like, that was a really cool, like, turning moment. And I know that that's a bit of a spoiler for this book, but, like, I had to because it fits the trope. And I want you to read this. And then if you don't love Nicholas, because again, he was not my favorite hero in this series, but I did have a 6-star book later on in the series and 2 other 5-star books in this series. So I very much love this series, and I think that this is a great one to read if you want to read like a forced marriage, like I said, because it definitely happens in here. It was crazy. All right. Then we have one that this one is also a 6-star read for me. It's one of my favorite books by this author that's ever been done. Yeah, I just love it. So this is Filthy Rich by Serena Ackroyd, and this is the marriage between Owen and I think it's Inessa. Yes, just wanted to make sure because there's a lot of names like that. But this one, he does not want to be put into an arranged marriage. He's been a soldier before. He is, you know, a soldier for his family. And they're like, no, we need this alliance with the Russians. And he's like, no, I don't want to marry a Russian bitch. I especially don't want a child bride because she's only 18 years old. But then when he's waiting at the altar and his bride is walking towards him, he notices that his wife has been worked over. His brand new bride has bruises that have been poorly hidden by the makeup. She is carrying herself like she has broken ribs, and she is a petrified, well, I wouldn't call her fully petrified because she has a backbone, but she has been so she's been so mistreated. And when he sees that, even though he's being forced into this marriage with her, he's like, well, how dare someone hurt my bride? Like, what a stupid motherfucker to hurt my bride who is being, I mean, granted, he's like, I think this is kind of fucked up that she's being given to me, but she's mine. Who would dare do this? And he finds out it's her father, and he tells her father, if you ever lay your hands on my bride again, I will kill you. I will end you, and I don't care what alliance we're supposed to be making. And so this is a case of like, this is a forced marriage for both of them. And Nessa has no say. She doesn't know whether this, you know, terrifying Irishman she's being married off to, if he will be the same as her father or even worse. She couldn't know that he's going to be her savior in a way and best friend and lover. Like, she couldn't know that. But he is, and it's beautiful. But it starts as a forced thing for both of them. But this is one where he's instantly like, you're mine. And I don't just mean that as like possession, because he's very good with, oh, he's so good to her. I love it. Like, she's expecting to have to consummate their wedding right away, and he's like, you have been pummeled. I am not a monster. Like, I'm not going to take your virginity when you can't even take a full breath. Like, we'll just Netflix and chill. He literally watches like chick flicks with her for their honeymoon. Like, I love them. I love them. But it does start as a forced marriage that quickly has Owen completely like fallen for her, but also just so protective. Like, his protectiveness is so strong, and that's what just does me in, y'all. It does me in. And then the last one I want to mention is one that I haven't talked about a ton because it wasn't as beloved as Run, Posey, Run. And so I think that's why it doesn't get talked about as much. But it still has a forced marriage in it. And I do still like it because it's K.T. Wells. So this is Nikki the Driver. And this book is Zita and Nikki. And Nikki works for Luca. And he is the reason that like her father is dead, and so her little brother is on the chopping block, and so to keep him safe, she agrees to this marriage because Luca wants to keep Nikki happy, and what Nikki asked for is Zeta, because he's actually had his eye on her for quite a few years. And so Nikki gets Zeta as a bride, and she's forced into it to protect her brother. So yeah, this book has a lot of emotional heaviness in it, so be prepared for that. But I mean, I really liked these two. This one, oh, that's right. This one also has depictions of an ED that can be very uncomfortable. So be prepared for that. Let me check the other triggers for this. Yes, and past incidences of abuse. So be prepared for that. But I thought this one deserved to be on the list because it doesn't get talked about a ton. And again, even though it didn't have the same swoony effects that Run Posey Run had for me, because I very much enjoyed that, this was some different aspects of Nikki being like, I know I don't deserve her, but I've just been offered that I could have any bride I want, and like I want her, even if she doesn't want me. So there we go, a man who's taking what he wants. It works. So there you go. I hope you like some of these. I'd love to know your recommendations for forced marriages. So more than just an arranged marriage or like a marriage of convenience, but one where one or more of the partners is being forced into it. One or both of them is being forced into it. I would love to know your recommendations for that. So thank you so much for watching, my friends, and I will see you next time. Bye.